Hello, everyone. Thanks for jumping onto this webinar today. Give it a couple more minutes just to see a few more people hopping on. I can see there's a lot of people already jumped on. We'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll start. The lineup for today is we're going to go through a couple of slides, and then I'm going to hand over to the three experts who have kindly joined us from Europe. Alistair Cox from FIH, Mikel Benetti from FIFA, and Mark Douglas from World Rugby. They'll be able to answer some questions at the end. There's a function to ask questions by typing them, or we can activate your microphone and then you can ask the question at the end there. So that's the format for today. So hopefully it works well.
Kieran, just a short note, you can also raise your hand and we'll get that as organisers, and the recording will also be available after the webinar, so it will all be recorded.
Perfect. All right. So is the PowerPoint up, Neil? Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. It's not a presenter mode, but I can see it. So you could probably just run it like that if you wanted, if you can't get to presenter mode.
Okay. All right, we'll get started. So the webinar or the topic today was governing body certification process. I get a lot of questions about how to carry out a certification for a field. So I just thought in the current climate, it'd be a good chance to get on and sort of talk through the process of doing it and sort of iron out any sort of myths or concerns out there. So that's what we're going to try and cover today. So we're going to look at how to get a system certified, how to get the field certified, the benefits. So we can look at some of the why it's good to do the certification process, and then we'll throw it open to the governing bodies to answer any sort of questions at the end that people will have. Just very quickly, just so if people don't know, Sports Labs were North America's largest testing sports surface testing lab. We have the largest accreditations for sports surfaces in the US or in North America, and we don't just look at turf. So we do also look at tennis, running tracks, and even equipment. So goal line technology, balls, goalposts, we can actually do other testing as well. As a whole, Sports Labs, based in America, is part of the Sports Labs group. That's the headquarters in Scotland. We've got offices all around the world. We believe that we're one of the largest testing companies around the world. So this is sort of why we feel like we can sort of help host this webinar and have a conversation about it today. So to start, who has a program? Who can give you a certification? There's many organizations, not just the three that we've got on the webinar today, but also FIBA, World Athletics, and tennis also have programs. These programs are available all across the world, so it's not isolated to one particular area. You can go anywhere in the world and use these certifications, these standards. What the governing bodies are great at is researching their expertise in their field. So making sure, for example, the best surface for field hockey is being played on. That's what FIH is there. That's what Alistair sort of looks into, making sure that his game is played on the best surface, especially considering for field hockey, it's played in the Olympics. Then we sort of come to why we do certification. In the US, certification testing is not a major priority, but it could very well be. And part of the reason why we carry out certification is to make sure the products are quality, making sure we're delivering the right products for the end user. With the certification process, these products get put through its paces to make sure it's going to stand up to the job. Also, we ensure that the surface at the end is of quality, making sure the surface is playable for the athletes at the end. Another sort of byproduct of certification is you get to host international events. like the Olympics, like Rugby World Cups or training events, like FIFA World Cup events. You need to make sure they meet these requirements. And then even on a national level, we need to make sure that we have these certifications in place, like the USL, Major League Soccer have requirements. USA Rugby has requirements when they host events. So that is why we need to look at the certification as an important part. So how do we start the process of getting a field certified? For us, as a sports testing lab, we think there's a couple of stages before you even start to pick products. We feel like you need to do, like when you start the concept or start the research, you need to be outlining what you're after. What's the field going to be used for? What do you need to have this field do? There's no point, in our opinion, building a long pile field that's really great for football, but then you can't play field hockey on it. If it's going to be a field hockey field, maybe you need to look at those parameters. If you're going to build a rugby field, then what's the restrictions there that you need to have to make sure you can get those requirements met at the end? Then consult and design the field or the surface to meet those requirements, and consult with the experts, whether that be the testing lab, the manufacturers, or the governing bodies direct, making sure that at the end you are going to be able to get the certification, that you are going to get the right products delivered on site. Because there's so many pitfalls between all the different standards. Once again, for hockey, if you're going to go for a global elite field for the Olympics, you need to make sure you have lighting, watering, stands, seating. Like there's a lot more to take in consideration than just the surface. Then you need to have the product lab tested. So you need to make sure that the system has been tested in a lab so it can be installed and be certified in relatively short time, because all the governing bodies have a time frame. So once you've carried out a field test, you need to submit the report within a certain time frame to the governing body. If the lab testing is not done, you're not going to meet those time frames, and then you run the risk of not being able to get the certification. Also, you want to know that the product's going to meet the requirements. Before you even start building, you want to know that product or that system is going to be able to meet the end result. Then comes the field test. Sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit. These slides will be at the end there. Back to sort of lab testing. Sorry, guys. The lab testing is sort of broken up into two parts. One is the materials itself, so the yarns, the rubber, the binder, making sure those materials are actually going to survive the process, the testing, and then testing them all as a unit or as a system, making sure that everything was working together, and that they're going to meet the performance requirements that are set out in the standards. At the end of all those testing, you get an official report. So the governing bodies will issue an official report. So once that's issued, then you know that your system can meet the requirements to be installed on site. Then you come to a field test. A field test has to be done by an accredited lab. You have to use the specialized equipment or equipment that's been written into the standard. And once again, you get an official report at the end of it. The field test can be quite difficult to pass because you need to make sure it's installed correctly, installed up to a certain standard. And we do that by checking that the player's surface with the testing available, and then the ball interaction. We also, what's a big key that a lot of people don't understand is we're actually taking samples from site to make sure they match up to that lab report. So when we physically take in those samples back to the lab, we need to make sure they match identically to the lab report. That is a big key, because you can't get the certification without it. You can't just switch a product or a material halfway through the construction. It's very important that we meet that. One of the keys for the US market is GMAX. This is the only time we'll mention GMAX. GMAX isn't in any of the standards, and it's important to understand that, because a lot of people in the US market are really concerned with hitting a GMAX target, which is okay. But for, say, field hockey, GMAX and field hockey sometimes go in opposite directions. So to have a usual GMAX standard, and then applying that to field hockey may not work. So if you are going to be building a certified field, maybe GMAX may have to become a secondary part to the bid or to the overall process. So it's just something to keep in mind, that GMAX isn't used by the governing bodies, and maybe in the situation for a particular field, that maybe you have to not so much ignore it, but it won't be part of the overall process. Something that I think is very important to highlight is all this information out there is free to access. It's on all the governing bodies' websites. We can put some links up at the end of this to sort of give access to it all. But there's no secrets to the information. It's out there. It's free. You can read it. I think majority of it's very easy to understand, and there's shortened versions of a lot of the documents, so you can easily digest it and go through it. It also lists for me, what's important is all the accredited manufacturers, so you can see clearly who you can go to and who can do a certification job. With the exception, I believe, of rugby, you don't have to be part of the program to do a rugby field. But for FIFA, FIH, ITF, they list all the manufacturers on the website, so you can actually see who you can deal with to begin with. One other big point, for me, it's a very important part, is being upfront about the certification. Is get ahead of it. If you're a designer or a school looking for a certification, don't hide from the fact that you want a FIFA certification or a rugby certification at the end of the project, because it gives a manufacturer time to make sure everything's in place, and highlight any potential pitfalls, like having no lab report, making sure that the field or the facility can meet the requirements. If you try to spring it on them halfway through, you end up having a situation where potentially the field may not be able to meet the requirements because there's no lab testing, the field's too small, it's not designed correctly, the slope's too big on the field. So really we need to be out in front and nice and early. Another big key is, just because the system's been lab tested doesn't mean the field gets certification. You do need to have the field and the lab certified together to have your facility certified. There is a lot of people believe that buying off an accredited supplier or buying an accredited system, that means that everything's certified. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. You do need to get the field certified at the end. Another key point is the top certification or the best certification always isn't the best for a facility, which comes back to the research and the concept design phase, is making sure you get the right accreditation or the right certification for your facility. So I'll use FIFA for example. They've got FIFA Quality and FIFA Quality Pro. Everyone wants Quality Pro because it sounds better, but FIFA Quality Pro may not be the best for the facility. The facility may be a multi-purpose field. You may want to know that material is going to be used a lot more than a pro stadium. So the FIFA quality testing is actually a longer process than the FIFA Quality Pro. So that's a bit confusing. Why aren't they the same? It's the Pro is designed for stadiums, and the FIFA Quality is your multi-purpose venues, your fields that are going to get a little bit more use. So the testing is more stringent on the quality system. So then that may be suitable for your everyday field or your fields that get a bit more use. The ones for the stadiums require the Pro because generally they're playing in leagues as well. So there is a difference. Same with the FIH. They've got different levels, and you need to look at those levels depending on your facility and what you want to try and get at the end there. Rugby just accommodates everybody. Use the manufacturer's knowledge. The manufacturers do know what they're doing. They do this on a regular basis. So for the designers on this webinar, sometimes you do need to not push back, but ask them for their opinion or what systems they they have tested. If you try to design a brand new system, it means going through the whole process, all the lab testing, which could delay the project, which could uncover any sort of delays. Where if you sort of go to them and say, I want a padded system with this particular infill, they may already have a couple of systems already tested and you can choose from them. If you do try to do a Frankenstein or a brand new design from the start, it can make it difficult for the manufacturers, so you sort of got to work in conjunction with them. We've talked about the product not being, just because the product's certified doesn't mean the surface is certified. And then with the exception of World Athletics, a certification doesn't have to cost thousands of extra dollars. It can potentially save some money. We've seen testing and quality control measures throughout a project save money because it makes sure it gets completed right the first time. So that is our stance on it. We believe it can reduce the cost if you do it right the first time, but that's up to the individuals at the time. As I said, World Athletics does have a fee per surface to accredit. World Rugby, FIFA, and FYH don't charge per surface or even per system. That's something the manufacturer looks after. Then once it's all said and done, you've completed everything. The lab's completed everything. There's online portals that we enter the information into, and then they go onto their websites. All the governing bodies have a list of a list of surfaces, and even some have products listed that you can go on and have a look and see if your product's certified or if you're field certified. It gives you a great information there to see if your surface is actually meeting the requirements. And then also it gives you information about when it expires. And another key part to it is just because you get it certified once doesn't mean it maintains its certification for the life of the field. Some requirements do mean you have to come back and retest either yearly or every 2 or 3 years, depending on the sport and the requirements. Some sports you do have to be careful, but make sure that if you do get it accredited, that you keep that accreditation, because it could mean playing in a professional league. If you don't have accreditation, then you can't host games or events. So you've got to be really careful that once you get it, you stay on top of it. That brings me to sort of the end of my slides. I really wanted to make this a bit more of a question and answer scenario with the governing bodies, because I thought we could ask them the questions direct. So what I'd like to do now is really open it up and try and get some questions between the attendees and the governing body people. So is there anyone that's got a question to start with? Was that someone there trying to ask?
So everyone can now unmute themselves. You can go in and click the mic if you want to ask questions. You can also put questions in by text and we can pick them up.
I think it was Jeff Grumlich from SDR trying to ask a question. Not John Bay.
No question of mine. I appreciate the information so far. I was just trying to see if I could unmute myself, so I'm good. Thank you.
All right, I think John Bays is going to ask something.
Hi. First of all, thanks so much for hosting this, Kieran. I think it's very important. Couple things. Number one, what advice would everyone have for multi-purpose surfaces? People do ask for certification, but what are the guidelines from rugby, football or FIFA, FIH in terms of if there's multi-sport lines on the surface, logos, colored end zones, things like that? How does one get it certified? And then also maybe go into the fact that designers often like their system, right? 50 millimeters, 2-inch file heights with certain amounts of infills and pads, but they want that plus get the pitch certified. And it seemed like it could be a little bit of an opposing force. So I just wanted to ask those 2 points.
Alistair, do you want to take that one?
I'll go first if you like. Afternoon, everybody. Hi, John. Good to hear from you. Certainly from a field hockey perspective, we are we have different categories of certification, as Kieran alluded to. Within our structure, we have the facility for certifying multi-sport fields. So we effectively have 2 categories which are dedicated for field hockey, and then 1 category which is multi-sport. And that can either be biased towards multi-sport, where field hockey is the primary sport, so it's a surface that hockey really likes, or it can be a category where field hockey is a secondary sport and the surface is more biased towards football, be it the North American version or the global version. Line markings in the multi-sport categories, clearly it's not multi-sport without other lines, so that's not an issue. Logos, we will tolerate them, providing that the colours in the logo have gone through all the toxicology and UV testing. Logos in end zones, runoffs, not an issue. Logos in the centre of the field, not so desirable, certainly for higher category facilities from a field hockey perspective.
I'll go next then. All right. I suppose the one thing from a multi-sport facility from rugby is, sorry, hi everybody, Mark Douglas here, is the fact that we work quite closely with FIFA to begin with anyway, and our 2 requirements are very much the same with a couple of small variations. So if you get a FIFA field, you pretty much have a World Rugby field, especially now that we're reducing our pile height to 50 mil, pile height requirement to 50 mil from 60. So I suppose from a multi-sports perspective, on top of what Alistair said, between the 3 sports that are here, if you get one, you pretty much have the others with a small variation at times. Just from what Alistair said on logos, we have no issue with logos anywhere on the fields with rugby. In fact, you'll see most rugby tournaments actually have logos in the middle of the field, so it's not a problem once they've gone through the required testing. And then the last point you made, John, about people prescribing their own systems. It's something we try to dissuade people from doing for a couple of reasons. One is it's probably more expensive, because if manufacturers then have to scramble to make a product that matches that requirement, then it's a one-off product, so you're going to have to pay for it, because you have to pay for all the lab testing and everything. Plus, what it does is it stops the manufacturer picking their best product for your solution. So say you want a field that does X amount of hours usage, and you want it for Y number of years, and you want it for whatever sports, you're better off saying to the manufacturer, this is what we want. What is your best product for doing this within a price range or within whatever limitations you set, rather than saying, well, I want you to do this because I think this is the best way for you to do it. These guys are the people who design their products. They're the ones who manufacture. They're the ones who give the warranty. So let them design their fields, or let them pick their product for your field once you give them enough information.
Mikkel,
Okay.
do you want to add stuff?
Yeah, for FIFA, the multisport is the quality mark. We have 2, quality and quality pro. So the quality is for multisport and community fields and training fields. No restrictions on logos, as long as the colors, line markings, and the colors used in the logos passed the requirement in the lab. And also, it has to be the same product as the green product installed. And then I agree about the modified product version. It will generate extra cost, but some delays, and basically the quality programs are designed to make systems that works once they are installed properly. So we would encourage to use the ones that already exist and developed by the licenses.
Sorry, Kieran, can I just say one more thing? Sorry, on the multi-sport, obviously OneTurf was developed with that in mind. It gives, I suppose, 3 stages of the process. One is you already have a field, what should it be doing? 2 is you're looking to install a new field, what should you be looking for? And the third section is if you're looking for specific sports within that. So if you combine all three aspects with whatever sports you're looking for within OneTurf, you should achieve certification for all sports.
Yeah. Was that breaking news about the 50 millimeters too, Mark?
Pardon?
Is that breaking news about the reduction in the pile height for rugby?
We've sort of put it out that we're in the process of changing it about a month ago. But yeah, I suppose it is. It's very, very new. We don't have specifics yet. We may put certain restrictions on it just because it's new and we're kind of going into uncharted territory for rugby. Yep. But it will tend towards higher quality products or higher spec products, if you like, if we do bring restrictions in.
All right. Just so everyone can
understand. Sorry, Kieran, it doesn't mean the 60 mil won't be allowed. It just means 50 mil is an option.
Yep. What I'm taking away where we can just do 50 millimeters from now on. That's all I'm hearing.
Don't listen to Kieran, anybody. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Carl, I see you've got your hand up for a question. Do you want to ask away?
Yeah, thanks, Kieran. Appreciate it. The webinar, and appreciate the insight from the three governing bodies. My question is particular to FIFA in the US. We've seen several jobs now which are requiring either a FIFA product and or a FIFA certified field, which we are very happy to see as we're trying to raise the standard of what we're playing on. The issue my first question anyways, about several of these jobs have gone to non-FIFA licensees who have spouted that they can achieve FIFA quality with their product. Is there a comment or a stance from FIFA on this?
The comment is it's not what we want. If a project requires FIFA certification, it's something we would encourage. Then I don't have a solution for this, but happy to help to push for final certification of the installation.
I'm sorry, I missed that last part about the installation.
No, we are happy to help licenses to push for the final certification of an installation if it has been mentioned in a tender. Happy to help if we can help.
Great, I appreciate that. The second comment, and I've looked into this a little bit already and would appreciate your thoughts, are some non-licensee or non-products, non-FIFA certified products have been effectively told that they can be used through a third party, through Idle Green or someone in Europe or someone in Turkey, for instance, who has a product that they could bring it here, even though it's not, the product isn't being made there. They're effectively trying to replicate a non-certified product, making it in the US. My understanding is that if that's the case, your factory must have undergo a FIFA safety audit. Is that correct?
Do you mean to produce a FIFA approved product from a licensee through a third party manufacturer?
Or non-licensees? In this instance, the original answer I received when I asked the question on a few particular jobs which required FIFA certified products was that the company who wasn't a FIFA licensee could use the license of another company and make that product at their factory. For instance, all the products are being made in the US. However, they would be making this product, copying the product, which is a certified product, which is being made in Europe, and make it here and pass it off as a FIFA product.
Okay. Yeah, we in the program. Yeah. Sorry,
Michael. I think I know what you mean. From our perspective, and I think FIFA is the same because we're quite similar. Is that if you're manufacturing a product and it's licensed or it's registered to a sports organization with you, then you must be the seller of that product. So say I am manufacturer X who has got certification of a product. I can't sell that to manufacturer B for them to then sell it on under their name. They need to actually go and get the lab testing done as well to be able to register theirs. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, and Mark, that's how I understood the answer, and that's how I took the whole product. And I am our company and me in particular are a huge proponent of this this whole process that you guys are undergoing, the One Turf concept, the FIFA certification, World Rugby certification, FIA certification. So we're trying to make the industry better, hold it to a higher standard. We prefer to, instead of defaulting to us or our competitors' marketing, we prefer, while that's important, we prefer to have you guys setting the standard and making the rest of us meet that standard. That's not happening with FIFA here, and it's super frustrating for us when we have this issue. So I just want to make sure we can find some way to make this, find some way to get a solution to this if we can, and or make it available to you guys.
Okay, so but just to understand, the issue is that a third-party manufacturer is more or less claiming that he is FIFA licensee.
Yes, really. Yeah, really, there are specific jobs which require FIFA either product and or testing being placed and given to companies who are not licensees and who do not have FIFA certified products. That's the main issue.
Okay, it's something we can speak maybe together after the webinar, and but in our third-party manufacturer agreement, it's a document that has been signed by the third-party manufacturer. There are some clauses about the use of FIFA brand or FIFA marks that are limited.
Yeah, and my concern is that, you know, it's devaluing FIFA here in the U.S. in North America. So there are some professional stadiums which are being required for the first and second divisions here, which are going to non-licensees. So I want to help. Again, we are big fans of what you do, and we want to help assure that these products are that it's being upheld. So we can connect after the call for sure.
Tom Shea, I'll come back to you in a sec, John, but Tom Shea, you've got a question?
Thanks, guys. This question specifically for little Mark. Thanks, guys. I'm curious, are there any notable updates related to new system research or testing to accommodate or prepare for the microplastics, I'll call it issue for lack of a better term, or just, you know, more environmentally responsible systems? You know, I'm aware of FIH with the Tokyo GT system being, you know, carbon capture aspects, super cool, reduction in water needed, you know, super cool, very important. Is there anything else kind of across the board that we can look to in the future that's in the works in that regard?
Also, you want to take that one?
Well, I think all of the sports are very aware of the environmental issues. The regulators in Europe are certainly making life increasingly challenging for the industry collectively. They are still continuing to meet at the moment, even though we have the coronavirus causing absolute chaos in Europe and elsewhere. And the vibes that I'm certainly picking up are not particularly positive. So I think we're all, and the three sports are talking frequently about this, we're all collectively trying to encourage innovation and good practice, because we're very aware that if we don't police ourselves, we will have regulation forced upon us. And we are all looking to try and address the microplastics issue. At the moment, it's infill, but certainly I think there's an awareness at some point they might start talking about fiber debris. which then creates problems for all of us. How we do that, and I know we have slightly different philosophies, if you like, about can we impose regulation globally as a result of something that's happening in one part of the world, be it Europe, North America, or elsewhere. But I think, yeah, we want to create awareness, and we want to stimulate innovation and improve the environmental credentials of the synthetic turf industry.
One thing that we're definitely doing, because I'm in the process of rewriting the performance specification at the minute, is looking for containment to be built into the field, that there's certain requirements in place to minimize the effect of infill spreading beyond the limits of the field or the sports facility, if you like. So if there's a track around it, it's obviously beyond the track. So things like that are putting in kickboards, putting in drainage traps, minimizing the entrance and exit from fields to make sure that there is grates so that players can clean their boots or clean their equipment before they leave the area. I imagine it'll be something that parents would thank us for, because I know when I used to play, your bag would be full of crumb rubber when you're coming home from field. So hopefully it'll minimize the risk of that. But it is something that, even though it is likely to be a requirement in Europe, or there's likely to be higher restrictions on it in Europe, we see it as a CSR exercise and something that we should be promoting worldwide as an environmental initiative.
Thanks, Mark. Is there any resources available now for some of those containment systems, or is that in the works?
Alistair, I believe you're working on the EN document for us, or the SEN approach to it, which we are hoping to reference once it comes out.
Yeah, so the European Standards Organization, which is the European equivalent of ASTM, but works on a pan-European basis. I chair that committee. We have developed a technical report, which is basically promoting good practice based on what we've seen developed in Scandinavia and other parts of Europe, where the microplastics have been an issue for 3 or 4 years. That report is currently going through its final ballot phase. Ballot closes in early June. If we get a positive response, that report will then be published. And the criteria in that is being used. FIFA already have incorporated it into their handbooks. Mark, I believe, is doing the same for rugby, and FIH, we will do the same. The European Synthetic Turf Council is also using that as the basis of its argument to say that an outright ban on polymeric infills, which is what is currently being proposed, is disproportionate. So we're hoping that European report, it is available. If you give me 2 seconds, I'll find the number and I'll quote it to you. It's out there with all that documentation. It is, I can find the right page, bear with me. It is the reference, where is it? Yeah, the reference is SEN Technical Report 17519. So in theory, you should be able to access that. You may have to pay to download it, I'm not sure, but you should be able to access it from the European Standards Committee. If not, we can probably provide a copy.
And it is in the Handbook of Test Method, FIFA, and it's available online.
Yeah. Mikel is, he was the most advanced, and FIFA have replicated the content.
Ryan Reed had a question, particularly about baseball and softball fields. There is no governing body requirements for baseball or softball at the moment, Ryan. I won't go too much into it, but sports labs here in the US have done some testing with baseball, so I've got a small program that I can give you some more details on if you want afterwards. Is there any other questions people have got. Yep. Carl, you got another question?
Sorry, Kieran, just on that baseball, softball thing, there's no reason to say that if players are running on a field, that's what they're doing on all of our fields. So there's no reason to say that it couldn't just be adopted, especially the player performance requirements, maybe not the ball surface requirements, could be adopted for a baseball or softball field. So we believe, because all humans are pretty much the same, we're all doing the same action on most of these sports that you're playing on long pile fields, that it can be applied to all of them. So I wouldn't necessarily say, well, it's been written for rugby or written for football, that means it's not equatable to other sports. There's parts of it that are, but the vast majority of it, and the quality as well, not just the player performance aspects, would be relatable to other sports. So, sorry for interrupting.
That's what you do best, Mark. Carl, did you have another question?
Yeah, sorry. This is really for Michael and Mark. Another thing we're seeing here is on replacement fields is the reuse of the rubber. Do you guys have a stance or ideas or comments about how that pertains? Any concerns over performance of those fields and/or microplastics issue? If you would allow that for a recertification or anything like that?
We have no issue with it once the grading matches whatever has been tested in the lab. So I imagine if you're lifting and replacing the rubber, you're gonna regrade it to a certain extent and take out the finer material. So once the IDs match, I would have no issue with it. Obviously, then because if you have finer materials, you're going to clog up the system potentially for drainage and stuff. So you may have issues on top of that. But once it matches whatever is in the ID, I can't see that we have an issue with it. Mikhail?
Yeah, I agree. It needs to match the identification. It can be reused.
Could I maybe
so how do we confirm that that it's matched that?
You need to test some samples of the infill you want to reuse, and you look if it matches the new product declaration that will be installed.
So if it's a new carpet or a carpet is being replaced somewhere else, in essence, that's an initial test for us. So everything gets tested, and even on a retest, the rubber crumb gets tested to make sure that if there has been any top-ups or there's no excessive wear or degradation of the crumb rubber. So by testing, you're automatically making that assessment.
Yeah. So would we need then to take some of that rubber out and get it retested at the lab? Because
the lab will do that as part of the testing.
Yeah.
Part of the testing protocol is to take samples from site and test them, bring them back and test them.
But you would be advised to do it in advance to determine its suitability.
Yeah, our concern is the risk of performance and/or microplastic in the field, and how do we assure that's not happening? It's just something that we see popping up here.
Maybe I can see if Pat Maguire or Meg might jump on, because they do this on a regular basis. I'm not sure if they're willing to share their information, but we'll see if they're listening.
Yeah, it would help again in the raising the overall standard of performance and of certification of fields, to have something like that in writing too. That so we can go forward and try to provide better pre-testing of those fields once they're taken out.
Pat's just asked me to repeat it. Pat, can you explain what you do if you're going to reuse the infill? I know you have a bit of an internal protocol there. No. He's coming up muted.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, so when we reuse infill, which we do quite a bit, we typically only will do it on fields that we designed previously because we know what went into it. Typically, we'll get a sample of that infill, or have Kieran take a sample of that infill and run it through some laboratory testing just to make sure that it meets sieve analysis, that it's not excessively dirty, and that also enables us to understand if we take some infill depth samples, we can judge how much infill we are going to have after we take the top 1/4 inch and throw that away, because that's typically pretty dirty. But that will give us an idea of whether or not we need to bulk it up with sand or bulk it up with more rubber, or a little bit of both. So it's just a matter of taking samples, or having Kieran take samples, take them back to the lab and run them through a typical analysis that you would run a rubber sample through to begin with. But again, I'll repeat, if we didn't design the original field and know what the source of the rubber and or sand was, we won't reuse it.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks for that.
At a European level, Kieran, a European standards level, we are also developing protocols for testing the infill, and that will include tests for elasticity and things to verify that the properties you require are still in a rubber that may be 10, 15 years old by the time it's getting reused.
Okay. Just quickly see if there's any more questions. Someone's just asked a question about GMAX for baseball. I'd probably suggest that maybe GMAX is for baseball similar to GMAX and FIH. Is that maybe they're counterproductive? So definitely you may need to review those limits for a GMAX test when it comes time to do a baseball field. I think the consensus out there is that a baseball field needs to be firmer, so maybe the GMAX wouldn't be there. Once again, happy to share what I've done with some baseball testing offline if anyone needs it. And someone's also mentioned, because Mark was being a bit difficult with his measurements, 60 millimeters is 2 1/3. So
nobody knows what it is in imperial. It's just 60 mil and 50 mil. It's very easy.
He's talking about going from 2 inches and 3/8 down to 2 inches. So for the US market, it's a big change. 2 inches is a very common pile height. So just wanted to clear that up for anyone that wasn't sure what we're talking about. All right. Is there any other questions, or people got anything to ask these 3 people while we have them?
Can I just reiterate, while people are trying to get their thoughts together, and reiterate something you said earlier, Kieran? We get a lot of misconceptions thrown at us that it costs money to get certification. There is no cost, as you said earlier, to any of our certifications. There is obviously a cost to the manufacturer of the product, which should be passed on in the price of the product. It couldn't cost you any more for it. Sorry, apologies for the background noise. But there is nothing. We don't take any money from individual facilities for any of this. The manufacturers pay to get it tested. They pay their affiliation and license fees. That is it. They would be paying that irrespective of whether they installed 1,000 or no fields at all, if they wanted it. So, just to reiterate that. And then the other thing that I would always say these things is, remember that maintenance is key on fields, and to always tie in your maintenance and usage levels with each other to make sure that they're both suitable for, or they match up. Thanks, and apologies for the background noise. He talks more sense than I do, though. So.
That's a very true statement, Mark. All right, doesn't look like anyone else has got any other questions, so like to thank everyone for jumping on and listening. Thank you, Alistair, Mikkel, and Mark. I know you guys are busy and it's probably late for you, and your baby's sitting there as well, Mark. So I appreciate your time, and hopefully everyone is safe out there, and we can get back to some normality very, very soon. So thanks again, everyone. I'll speak to you guys all later.
Thanks, Kieran. Thanks all.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All the best.
Thank you.
Right, Con.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks.
Speak soon.
Thanks, guys. All the best. Chat soon. Stay safe.
All right. I'll speak to you
Cheers.
later. Bye.
Good night.